Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. Austin Linney here. I have Joseph, and Jenn in the house, the Creative Finance Playbook. Guys, we're going to talk about what doesn't get talked about. To be honest with you, everybody thinks that you have to go out and you have to get a mortgage and you have to save up and you have to buy real estate. You have to have a great W-2, and that is not the case by any stretch of the imagination. So I want to welcome you all to the podcast. And what I like to do with my guests is let them tell their story, and then we kind of go from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. We're excited to chat today. And what a beautiful intro. I think that really sets it up because so many folks are in that, one way only. And with creative financing, there's a lot of different lanes for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us on. And I think that's the really great thing about, creative financing is there's no banks involved. And we're able to do a lot of deals and help out sellers where really a lot of other investors can't make that work. So I guess a little snapshot on us. I was lucky enough 20 years ago to be at one of my friend's house. I was 22 at the time. And he actually showed me, he bought this thing on television, some late night infomercial about how to buy and sell real estate with no credit and no money, which was perfect because at the time I had bad credit and no money. So This was right up my alley. So I asked him if I could borrow it, and he did. And I listened to the audio cassette tapes. I watched the VCR tape. I read the book. And the next month I had a house under contract, a wholesale deal, and found a buyer just like it told me to do. And I made $15,000 in just a few months, cleared, I think it was 12.7 by the time I paid the attorneys and all that. And I was hooked. I was completely hooked into real estate. Was starting to work on a couple other deals, but I needed health insurance. I have Crohn's. So it's a, issue with your stomach. So I get a job where I am now, in the car business. I'm selling cars for a few years. I get promoted into the finance office just a couple years later. And then doing that, I just really still had that passionate love for real estate. And from my connections now, I actually had great credit and a lot of money. So knowing everybody I did at the banks when 2008 happened, I meet Jenn.
I was going to say, that was like one of the first things. We were messaging back and forth, and I had just bought a house the same year you did, I think, 2006. We didn't know each other. And I was like, I need to fix it up. He's like, oh, I love to fix up a house. And I'm really into real estate. And I was like, okay, cool. Well, fast forward in 2008, we met in January. Come September, August, he's buying another house. So we're on now house 3. And I'm like, what the heck? Why do we need another house? I thought he was crazy.
Because she was a teacher at the time. And this really wasn't her thing. She didn't understand really a lot about it, but we were in
I didn't have the vision back then.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to, see it from the very beginning, but we started, it was 2008. We started finding some really good deals. The market took a little bit of a dip across the whole country. In our area, didn't get impacted that badly, but it's still, there was a lot. It was definitely a time to buy houses if you had cash or, access to money. So we started scooping up a lot of deals, 2008, 9, 10, got married in 2010, started having kids, and my career has been taking off. Jenn decides to walk away from almost 10 years of being a teacher to stay home with little ones.
Wanted to stay home for sure. So at that point, we had about 4 or 5 rental properties. We were just working on a short sale that we had purchased like 2016. And we started doing a little research. Okay, like what's a different model? Because we're not loving the landlord life. We're not liking all these maintenance repair calls. I'm not, liking chasing tenant money and all that jazz. So he kind of revisits this whole creative finance thing.
And that's really where we started to dive in deep in it and restructured everything what we did. We got tired. We understood we wanted to scale.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have a lifestyle that we could not be tied to 50, 60 hours a week at my job. The money was phenomenal at my job, but the time was not mine. And so really where we dove into the creative finance was at that time, had a bunch of our rentals that once their leases were up, we converted all of those into rent to own.
It was crazy. It was absolutely insane to do like 5 at once.
And then started buying deals with the creative finance. And our first deal that we did with the creative finance was a $100 down deal 0% mortgage. And the seller was happy he got a house sold, and we were happy we bought it for a decent price, but at a 0% mortgage, it didn't make much of a difference. And with only $100 down out of pocket, plus we had to pay the closing cost, which is only about $3,000. We now own real estate without having to go to a bank, without having to come up with 20% down or do the BRRRR strategy, which is originally what we were doing in 2008, 9, 10, not knowing that that's what it was called, but that's what we were doing. And realized that there really wasn't a lot of margin in your monthly profit from burring. Even if you redo these houses, there's still tenants in there. There's still going to be stuff that happens. So if you have one repair or two repairs throughout the whole year, it could really, take a dive in your profit margin. So we started looking at profit margins. We started looking at really, I think what the big indicator is if we're going to scale and getting all these calls, either we're going to have to hire a property management company and have less cash flow, which was a horrible idea. For us, it was. Not for everybody, but for us, it was. Or we could retool what we're doing. And that's why we went with the rent-to-own model, because we're dealing with different clients now. Yeah. And that was the real key to it. We're dealing with future owners of properties and not tenants. And it's a difference between you rent a car or buy a car. You're going to treat them differently, okay? The car that you bought is going to be yours one day when you pay it off. Well, it's the same thing's going to go with a rental. You're never going to own that car. So we figured that the clients were treating the properties the same way. So once we did that, and eliminates all of our maintenance calls now because they're responsible for them, we really saw the vision to scale. And once we realized that we could buy all these properties without cash, that was really the way to go. Fast forward, my career is now completely taken off. Where I work for the largest Chevy dealership in the country. We're buying more stores. I had lunch with the owner 2 weeks before COVID happened in February of 2020, and says they're buying 9 more stores, and they were going to put me on a mission to go help open them up, and more grandeur things for me to go on. And she got really sad.
I was upset. Yeah, we just decided that we were going to start doing a little more with marketing, and we wanted to buy more properties because, again, we had that goal like 5 years down the road, we would do this full time. And here I was being told, I'm being promoted again. And I'm like, great, but now we're never going to see you. And then COVID hit, and he stayed home, and he hasn't gone back since. So,
are you still working the job?
No. We walked away from my W-2 last year.
1 year ago.
When COVID happened, I talked with my doctor, and they said, well, you take Humira. It's a well-known medication for my Crohn's. And they said, with that lowering your immune system, that puts you at high risk. You're around thousands of people per month. Your chance of you getting this are going to be very high. And if you do, we don't know what it's going to do for somebody like you. So come March last year, I kind of made that decision to, before the country closed officially, about a week before that, I was home permanently. And we decided at that point, we were already going to do this, but it was the time was now to do it. And we saw a lot of the indicators of when we were going to close, New York State for 3 weeks to help the curve. And we realized and saw the bigger picture. This was going to be a lot longer than 3 weeks.
Right. Having that idea in our head, knowing it was like, now is the time to not just sit down and watch Netflix. It was time to really start building this business up from the ground up.
There's so much to unpack there, but more importantly, I want to hit on something that's super important that I don't think people pay attention to, especially because we're about to be in the construction space where we're building new houses, which is something I've been wanting to do forever. And then I've done Airbnb across many states all across the country. With Instagram, with social media, there's a new tactic in the real estate space every 5 minutes. You can do this, or, I'm going to wholesale, I'm going to flip, I'm going to buy apartments. And what I don't think people realize is that might look good on the surface, but I live my life off of what is that business transaction, or what am I getting myself into, and what does it do to my lifestyle? And if you set 20 operators of Airbnb in the room and you ask all of them on the first day, how many Airbnbs are you going to manage? I'm going to manage 250. And then you ask them a year later, how many are you going to manage? Like 10. I'm good. Right. And it's the same thing with y'all. Look, this is great. We're moving the needle. We're buying the houses like we're supposed to, so on and so on. But it's just not working for us in the aspect of, wow, this is a lot on my time. And I love the fact that you said, no, I know it's going to be hard. We're going to retool the whole system. But this is like looking at it from a 5-10 year plan instead of just what we're doing right now, because you could have easily just stayed with what you were doing, and you'd have 20 houses or so on and so on. So I love that aspect, because that's exactly what I talk about on the podcast. Is you have to really understand, and you might not know till you get down. But you have to make that decision, and you have to pivot.
Well, and you said the key word was pivot, and that was really the difference for us. And I think the real key for us was, we've always been a part of mastermind groups across the country, high level ones. You have to pay humongous money to get in some of these, and we've learned from other folks. So, as good as we are, these are things that we've absorbed throughout 20 years of education, and really we've invested a lot of money in ourselves,
right,
and our education to really find what are the best methods. Because like you said, on Instagram, everybody could stand in front of a picture of a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or a Lamborghini and put on a nice suit and a couple watches and make it look like they're doing all these wonderful things, but it's all about the net. And that's what nobody ever talks about. Everybody always generates 10 million in sales.
You're my new favorite person. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've been in the business world for 20 years, and I've dealt with some heavy hitters. I mean, personal jet guys, many of them. And it's not about gross sales. It is, that's important, but it's about net and what's your business netting. Because I've seen lots of times people have $10 million, yearly sales, but they still only net out at 50,000 a year. Mm-hmm. So you don't make 10 million, you make 50,000.
I have a guy that's kind of teach me over the years, big hitter out of Arizona, 100 flips a year, 100 wholesales, $40 million brokerage. At one point he had 35 agents, office, the whole nine. And he said, our top line revenue is awesome. Like, we're crushing it. And then he said, I would sit in my backyard and I would look at my P&Ls, and he's like, I'm only clearing like 7K. And he's like, what is going on? I feel exhausted. And so what he did is he let everybody go, got rid of the office. They run a $45 million brokerage with all those flips and wholesales out of his home. No office, no agent. He has 10 agents. Nobody has an office. And he's like, our net to gross is amazing. I can't tell you, because I'm a coach, I can't tell you how many wholesalers I talk to, where if you went by their Instagram, they're pulling in 250 G's a month, but no, that's what they're spending on a budget. And they're probably bringing in like $7,000, and it's all smoke and mirrors.
That's 100%.
Instagram exactly is smoke and mirrors. Absolutely. And we try to be authentic. We share what we can. You can't share every minute. Obviously it's exhausting.
Of course. Yeah.
But there's so much to just kind of scroll by. And I think as a new investor, you have to keep that in mind, because there's a lot out there that you could be fooled by.
I want to unpack, and I've never talked about the own to rent model and the reason I'm so excited is we're about to start building single family residence and small multifamilies in Texas and around the country with my company. And one of the guys that we're approaching for this runs $1 billion equity fund. He's a buddy of mine. They do large scale developments, and they're working on a 22 city, probably 50 to 100 houses per city rent to own model. This is what they've been working on for a long time. He is a high level investor. And when he told me this, I was like, wow, this matches exactly what we're trying to build. We have a property management company. I'd like to get in some of that. So can you break me down for anybody that doesn't understand, what is the main difference, the soup to nuts of just a regular long-term rental and then a rent to own model?
So I look at investing a lot of different ways. The reason why we love the rent to own model is obviously we're going to own real estate. We're going to write off depreciation because we're the owners. Once we have a tenant buyer in place, they're going to give us, it's a minimum of 10% of the selling price down as their option payment. So on a $200,000 property, we're looking at a $20,000 down payment or more. Those could be very well 30 or 40 as well. So when you're looking at dealing with a renter, you're never going to have that. So we make that money up front like a wholesaler would, right? That big chunk. Second is now we get monthly cash flow. It's all about monthly cash flows. You're getting that money every single month coming in, regardless if you're on the beach or wherever you're doing. And that was really key to us too. So with that, we're averaging a little over $500 a door. So with this being the case, because you could get more from doing a rent to own model, now you also eliminate all of the maintenance calls because the tenant buyer knows they're responsible for all the maintenance, repairs, utilities, appliances, all of that. So we get no more calls. So now we're getting monthly cash flow and we're getting the depreciation. We're having none of the maintenance calls. And then once your tenant buyer goes through this process, and it could be 2 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years. It all depends. But once they buy it out at the very end of it, guess what happens? You're going to get another big back end check like a house flipper would. Now, the difference is with us, there's no paying a realtor, the 6% commission, and there's no capital gains tax because we own the property for more than a year. So we eliminate some of the expenses, we eliminate the responsibilities, and the cash flow is way better. And the benefit of this too is I've been a son and a grandson of real estate investors, and on those long-term holds, eventually, guys, you're going to have to do a roof. You're going to have to do windows. You're going to have to do kitchen and flooring, and how many times you're going to paint the place and do land. There's going to be stuff when you're dealing with tenants. We don't do any of that stuff because we're in and out of that property in usually 5 to 10 years. So therefore,
go ahead. I apologize.
So therefore, I think I just hit on a whole bunch of great reasons.
No, it's great. And I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Because I only know this model because my ex-wife's sister's parents have 50 of these. That's why I understand. That's when I learned about it. What would you say the percentage of people default and don't wind up following through with the house?
So that is a great question because we get that often. Mm-hmm. So that all depends on your screening process in the beginning. And it all starts in the very beginning. So what we do is we actually set it up correctly. We have a company that we use that does screening. They're going to do a snapshot of these people, not just credit, background. I mean, this thing is a thick report. Yeah. And they're going to give you a snapshot of these folks and their eligibility to get a mortgage is going to be in 1.5 years, 2.5 years, whatever it is. So now there's also credit enrollment courses they could get into. Then we have a mortgage person on our team who actually is real good at, just helping folks out with getting a mortgage. Some people are very just, if it fits this box, great, not. Others are really, really good. So we have a good mortgage guy on our team. We screen the folks right in the very beginning, and you're still going to have if you don't monitor it and you just throw anybody in the house and you just collect a little tiny down payment, that's your number is probably going to be closer to 30%. If you collect a big enough down payment, so once they do fix their credit or do fix whatever it is, they have enough money to close. And that's the real key, because most times we listen to people all the time. They say, I collect $2,000 down.
Yeah.
You need more than $2,000 to close.
Fail, if anything. Mm-hmm. And our model is we want our renters to become homeowners.
Yeah. So I would say we're closer to probably the 70-80%. We've had one default.
So then the question is why more investors don't do it?
I think it's one of those things where it's just out of the box. I mean, people are very follow the crowd, and a lot of people, everything kind of comes in waves. And I feel like right now it's like the Burr and the Airbnb, and that's like the cool trendy thing. And I think the creative financing will be the next wave because it's just about exposure and education. And so I don't see a lot of people that they don't know about it, so they can't talk about it. They can't do it if they don't know it. And there's such a right way to do it and a wrong way. And I think that's what we're trying to explain with the rent to own. If you don't collect that down payment and you don't screen them and have them kind of walking this path of homeownership, then they are going to default. And so you have to figure out, priorities, and ours are definitely getting those people cashed out down the road.
I think that's the important part, is that you actually want them to be a homeowner.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Unlike a scummy who's just trying to take the quick hit and then hope they don't go through. And I think that's why people can understand that. And I think they're more committed to the situation.
Well, and I think what Jen just hit it right in the head, because when I did my first deal 20 years ago, there really wasn't as many wholesalers. Now there's wholesalers everywhere.
Right.
And then when we started doing Burr at 13 years ago,
it didn't have a name.
It didn't even have maybe it did. I don't even know. But, she just came to me like about a year ago. And she's like, this is what we've been doing. We used to do this Burr thing. I'm like, Burr, what are you even talking about? And then she starts explaining to me what it is.
Hashtag Burr, look.
And I was like, yeah, we did that so long ago that we stopped doing it. Yeah. And so I think we've always kind of been a little bit ahead of the trend because of the mastermind group that we've been a part of. Mm-hmm. So what we've been working on this creative financing thing since 2016, we're in it for 5 years now. I think we're another 5 years out to maybe even 10 years out before it starts to become a little bit more mainstream and talked about a lot more regularly.
as I listen to y'all speak, you know what doesn't go out of style, no matter what style's out there? Having good intentions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Holding real estate with the right attitude, looking at a long-term vision, creating a win-win for everybody, that doesn't go out of style. Absolutely. No matter if it's Airbnb, wholesaling, it doesn't matter. And that's where everybody has it wrong, because they hang on to those words, those buzzwords. Like, I'm going to go do this. And what you haven't done is you haven't gone all the way down the road. Like, you got to go all the way down the road and see if you like squeeze the limit, but no, they're half in 7 different things.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point. We've followed a lot of other investors, and it gets heartening when you're having a $200,000-$300,000 property and you collect $3,000 for your option deposit, knowing these folks are going to need another 12 or more to actually get a mortgage in a year, and if they don't, they're kicking them out. Like our folks, even with COVID, if they didn't meet their term, we just extend it. I don't want to throw anybody out of a property, and they want to own it. So you understand that sometimes you have good people that just something bad happens to them, and COVID affected a lot of people. So with that being the case, we still hang in there with all of our folks and just try to help them. And we just had a success story a month ago. We did an interview with one of our tenant buyers. Now he's an owner, and it's just such a cool process, to be a part of that. And they're like family to us, every one of them. So it's pretty cool.
I love that. Now, what I didn't talk about is the mechanism to obtain the property, which is probably the most important thing. So walk us through how you go about doing that. Are you like the basic nuts of what it looks like, and so people understand that aspect of it?
So we do all creative finance now. We don't go to a bank anymore. Haven't in probably 3, 4, or 5 years.
Since 2016, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, good. I was close then. I knew it's been a while, but we don't go to banks anymore. We're typically buying around that 4 to 5 to 6 houses a month. Some of them are actually land, but most of them are houses. And with this being the case, we have a team of 5 acquisitions that work with us. And we had 2, and we just added 3 more to the team. We've had a lot of folks reaching out to us who are interested, and it's just a great opportunity. And really, we do a very unique marketing strategy. And I think that's the big thing. And Jenn really hits that on the head.
Yeah, I was going to say, we stay right off the MLS back in the day where you could go and find a $30,000 property, and then it's going to be worth 110, 120, but that's done and gone. So we don't even go there anymore. So for us, we're working with sellers directly, and they're all off-market leads. So any given day, you can go right to Facebook and hop into a group and see somebody has a for sale by owner posted someplace, or perhaps on Marketplace. And then also just sharing with the world on social media that this is what we do. We buy and sell houses. We really make it a point to not be big, bad investors in some big company. We're just a mom and pop, and people love that approach. And we just feel that it's really serving the community well too, because some of our sellers actually get such a kick that this is what we turn it into a rent to own. They're like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing that now we're helping somebody else get into a house. So we were just talking to some folks that are going to move down to North Carolina, and they're all excited about that. So, when you find the right people to work with, it really is like an awesome mechanism that we've built here.
Yeah. And we do all of our deals 100% virtually.
Yeah.
So that's why we buy all over New York State, all over Pennsylvania, North Carolina. We're just gotten to North Carolina. So we're looking for deals there. Don't have any yet, but we will shortly.
Don't worry. I got you. I'm cooking up something. You're gonna like.
Yeah, I love it.
Yay.
It's already, see?
Yeah.
So, we just
Pittsburgh too. Sorry. I didn't want to lose my train of thought. I got you.
I love it. We just worked on a deal Friday night. And with the deal, it was really simple. We had folks who just bought a house in August of 2020. Yep. They don't want to live in New York anymore. They're from North Carolina. They want to move back down to actually South Carolina this time. And so they reached out to us because of our marketing. One of our acquisitions team members reached out to them. We have a script to ask the questions. We get back the answers, and this will look favorable. So we get onto a call with the seller, and we just kind of go over the terms. And really the difference for them, they just needed a couple $1,000s to get their moving expenses to move back down, the U-Haul truck and things like that. So we went with originally $2,000 down, but then we had to redo it to $4,000 down. So not the end of the world. So it's a $4,000 down deal, and they're happy. They have a beautiful ranch. And the crazy thing about it is they just bought it a year ago. They did a whole bunch of work to it because they're actually contractors by trade, but they moved to like the most coldest place in New York State. It's like the most northern tip of New York. It's freezing up there.
Right by Canada.
And they're from the Carolinas, so they're not used to this winter. I think the winter probably tore them up pretty good.
It wasn't even that bad.
Yeah, but with that being the case, now they owe 29 more years on their mortgage.
Okay.
And we are buying the property. We own the property at that point. We're just going to continue making the payments to their bank on their behalf until our tenant buyer gets it cashed out down the road. And so we will install a tenant buyer who's going to give us, once again, 10, 15, 20% down. So on a property like that, if we have to give out $4,000 plus a couple thousand in closing costs, minimum down payment will be 10 to 15,000 down. So we'll recuperate all that cost. And now we put a tenant buyer in the home who's going to own that property.
And what's the number one thing that everybody says? Anytime you heard about owner financing, what if the bank finds out and they call the loan?
Yeah, it's possible. It could happen. However, they don't want to do that. And if you actually had a conversation with the bank, explain to them what you're doing, that you own the property and that you're making those payments. And generally, if they see that you've been making those payments on time, most time they don't ever want to call it due. We've done this a lot. We've had a lot of other investors, networks, thousands of deals. And I mean, there could be maybe a handful of them ever that have been called due. And typically, if they are, it's because the payments aren't current. If you
that crazy thing. Yeah, that crazy thing.
If you have the proper insurance and your payments are on time, the bank doesn't want a property. They're in the business of lending money, not owning real estate. They don't want to take a house back. Now they have to pay property management fees and all this to maintain this property.
Right.
And it could be for years before it could be sold. So with that being the case, make the payment, 10 days early. And make sure you've got adequate insurance in the house, and they're never going to hear from you, chances are.
And that's the thing, is there's like the reptile brain, or like the action taker, and then the thinker brain, right? And so I think a lot of people are like myself, we're very thinking, overthinking things. And he's very action, or he thinks things through too. But I was nervous at first. I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened? And you can't worry about that, right? It's like worrying if I'm going to walk across the street and get hit by a car. Like, it's crazy. I mean, you just got to go through the motions, do what needs to get done, pay them on time. Like Joe said, we pay early. And then if something comes in and, the insurance needs X, Y, or Z, you get with your insurance lady, she sends a copy over. I mean, it's just a little fine details, and everybody's happy. Like, the bank just wants their money, like Joe was saying.
Well, and there's other ways to get around it too. I mean, you could buy it with a sandwich lease purchase, and there's a technique. The deed doesn't get transferred, and you still retain the control of the property. And now there's no closing costs too when you're buying. And there's a cool system we kind of have. So if you're worried about that,
they're not going to come and arrest you or anything. I mean,
did you read Pitch Anything? The book?
No.
Did you read? Well, Pitch Anything. He's a rainmaker for deals, and that's the entire concept of the book is the crocodile mind versus the other mind. Yeah. And so I was like, wow, like she's dropping some knowledge on us. I love it. It's the truth. This is what I do for a living. I study human behavior. It's my behavioral investing and stuff like that. Okay. So this is the next question. For anybody that wants to do this or give that an option, how do they go about finding the contracts they need or any of the resources? Should they hire a lawyer? Like all these things.
So,
good questions.
Yeah, those are all great questions. I always say it depends on what you're looking to do. I would always talk to a lawyer and make sure you're doing the forms and the correct agreements that are good for where you live.
Well, especially because we didn't preface too, like some states don't allow rent to own. So you need to make sure.
Texas is the only state that doesn't allow rent to own. You can for up to 6 months.
Yeah. So just be aware.
Damn Texas. We let everything go, and they're going to kill us on that one. That's not acceptable.
There are workarounds around that too. You just in Texas, just like anything else, you just have to be good enough to find a workaround. And there's plenty of different ways to do that there too. But,
get with your attorneys. I mean, we use a lot of the standard purchase sale agreements, and obviously then with our tenant buyers, you're going to have the lease and then the option to buy. So it's just getting with an attorney that knows creative financing too, because there are some attorneys that don't know it. They'll say it can't be done, and they're just because they're saying that because they don't know anything about it. Whereas we've got a really great attorney, and he knows the ins and outs of it all. And Joe's had a lot of, talks with him about all of that.
Well, and I think, we have some really special agreements that are dialed in correctly for all of these things. And I think that's the big factor is get something that you're comfortable with, don't let that stuff kind of hold you back. You got to really go find a deal and then worry about that stuff.
Yeah. Again, take action.
But I will say that one thing that could really help get you there a lot faster is every single time that we've worked with a mentor or in a mastermind group, we've exploded forward, and not just a small little jump. Like, we've actually exploded forward every single time. And, I look at people who spend $50,000, $100,000 or more going to college to learn how to do some of the most basic jobs that don't really pay a lot, where if you actually spend some money on yourself, learning from other people who are millionaires how to make millions of dollars, because your college professor, chances are, isn't, because if they were, they wouldn't be doing that maybe.
Well, and I'm sure from your perspective as a coach, there's something about the human psyche where when someone else is already doing it, it just seems more attainable. Like, we can do it too, even though you can read about it and watch it. Like, if you're having a one-to-one conversation and that person can literally walk you down the path with it, you're better off with that. And also having them see inside your business, like the things you can't see. Because when you're in it, it's just like, I don't know, sometimes I feel overwhelmed and chaotic, and somebody else will look in and say, well, just do this. And you're like, oh, okay. And then life is so much easier.
Yeah. I'd say about $4,000. I was in for like 3 or 4 months. And then I started a business with 2 guys I met in the mastermind, and it went great. We scaled up, but we scaled up too quickly. Nobody knew about the finances. Long story short, lost $26,000, like all that stuff. Right. And I was like beating myself up for like 2 days. I was like, dude, I was so upset when I decided to walk away from that business. And I was like, just like, you blew your one shot. Like, this was like 2 years ago. You blew your shot, blah, 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 shit. And like, my buddy called me and he's like, hey man, he's like, I'm curious. He's like, do you have a master's degree from a business college? No. Did you graduate college? No. Is it the first real business that you ever started, like off on your own? Yeah. Okay. Well, then you just went to college. Sounds good. Let's go. And it was like that shift where it was like, okay, that's the best. And I look now in my new businesses as a business partner, like as a human, I'm so much better for it. And it gave me the confidence. But more importantly, what I don't talk about enough is that mastermind that I joined. Those 2 guys I did start a business with were in recovery as well. And they were the first humans that I'd been around where they were successful at their jobs and they weren't drinking. And so they said, if you ever thought about stopping drinking, like just stop. And so I've been sober for 2 years and 3 months because of those 2 humans. So I'll spend that $26,000 every day of the week, because for the next 60 years of my life, it changed my life. And when I met the guy that brought me in the mastermind, I've been looking for a couple of years. I couldn't find the right one. And he said, why do you want to, it was like right when we sat down, like, he's like, why do you want to join the mastermind? I said, because my dreams are bigger than the people I'm around. And he was like, okay, we don't need to talk about anything else. You're in. He's like, best answer. And I'll forever, I agree with you 100%. It's alarming to me, the amount of money people waste on bullshit and they will not invest in themselves. It blows my mind. The people that are sitting next to you in the mastermind could be your future business partners.
Well, and that's the point. You see people just frivolously spend money and have the newest, latest, greatest everything, but they won't invest that money back into themselves. And, like what you said on your business experience, it was not a failure, because the only way that would have been a failure is if you learned nothing from that experience. You learned a lot of valuable lessons from that experience, and there was a price that you paid for it. So that was an experience for you that was very, hopefully it brought you a lot of knowledge of some things to do, some things not to do, and growth. And so therefore it's money never wasted. Even though in a bad experience, you could always find something, great out of it.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I want to go back into the beginning, because you were getting promoted. I'd imagine you're making damn good money, and COVID happens, and I do the joke, and I haven't said the joke in a while, but there's a 23-year-old that at 80 years old will be sitting on a porch in a rocking chair, angry as shit, bitching and moaning that COVID ruined their whole life. Of an 80-year life, he'll talk about a year or a year and a half that ruined his whole life. And that's how people look at stuff. and you decided to look at it from a different point of view. I'm sure leaving the money on the table that you were bringing in is a change, right? But as you look on it back now, it's been about been over a year. Do you view it as a gift for your family, and what kind of like almost propelled you to make the decision without a choice, and kind of like, yeah, you had a choice in the matter, but kind of a gift instead of the other way around?
Well, I think that in all due respect to my last job, I burned the hell out of them ships. I still go in there. I still see my friends. I'm still friends with the owners. Everything is great, but I burned the ships. I'm not coming back.
Yes.
And I made that decision. And once that really decision happened, because we both have a mentality, if we're going to do it, we want to dominate it. We want to go all in and really give it our best, because we know if we do and have really laser focus on that, we're going to do well. And so once I burned the boat, and it was her having convinced me, because I'm like, well, that's a whole lot of money I'm walking away from, and the security and
the health insurance, all the things that you worry about before you go in self-employment. And I'm like, no, like this is our chance. This is what we wanted. It's a weird way to get it. And we're stuck inside and the kids are home, and oh my gosh, how are we going to do it? But we did it. And it has literally been the biggest gift and the biggest blessing. And this year has changed our lives and the kids' lives. I mean, he obviously was around, but not a lot. I mean, he'd wake up, they'd be sleeping, he'd come home, they'd be in bed. And, that was hard. And now they're going to go back to school, hopefully in the fall here. And it's going to be a weird transition for all of us. But I mean, having him to help to raise the kids, I mean, it's a blessing, to say the least. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, it's weird when the kids, it's not dad anymore. The kids are going and you're like, whoa, where are you going? Like, my buddy works, he manages a bunch of money for UT, and they've been gone for a year. And he was like, man, his son's like 2. He's like, dude, it's been awesome to like be able to have lunch with my son. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm still trying to get stuff done. He's like banging on the drums, but he's like, I'll take that over the commute to work and all these things like that. And I think the freedom of, a mentor told me everything that happened this last year, let's say technology and just Zoom and everything, it was coming anyway from 5 years from now. It just happened now. And so you can either accept it and appreciate that we're in a new lifestyle where people they can choose what they want to, and they can move. And you got to know that when you're investing, and you got to see the writing on the wall,
Well, and I think, to piggyback off that, the reason why it worked for us opposed to many other folks that can't do what we just did is because we understand creative finance. Mm-hmm. Once again, we're not going to banks saying, please give us a loan for this property. Mm-hmm. We're able to just deal directly with the seller and work out a deal where we don't have to use banks anymore. And some of these loans that we're getting are 0% mortgages because their sellers' houses are paid off. So we're able to get much better deals than the banks will give us too. So with that being the case, if we had to stick to the conventional way of buying the house, fixing it up, rehabbing it, refinancing out of it, with the short margins on cash flow, with just being landlords and not having that W-2 job, walking into a bank saying, even with my credit score being 800 and hers is 2, but without having that income, they would be like, it'd be a lot harder. I'd be
running back to the classroom to have to teach, probably, like you just don't even know. I mean, the creative financing really did save us. If we didn't have all the things in place to just take that leap and knowing what we know, I think it would have, and that's why I think we're so passionate about teaching it, because it's everybody can do it. It's not as scary and hard as it's made out to be. Again, it just comes with some knowledge and education and taking the small steps every day to make that deal happen and just jump in.
That's absolutely right.
So if people wanted to find out, or like, is there avenues, books that you recommend? Like, how would they go about learning about creative finance?
Well, I would say on our Instagram, we put up a lot, and we love sharing with our audience and just talking about tips and tricks. And the one thing that's really neat too, is if you go to the creativefinanceplaybook.com, we're right now having a free 30-day challenge where with this free 30-day challenge, these are the things that we do in our business currently that you could start implementing into your business at no cost. None of these things
takes a little time.
Just takes a little bit of time.
Okay.
30 things where if you started this challenge in the beginning and really legitly stuck to it, you're going to be in a different place within 30 days. And so we put a lot of those resources up there too. Same thing with Creative Finance on our Facebook and YouTube channel, where we get with our team on Zoom calls. And then what we do are live seller calls where we actually start calling sellers on the phone and making deals so our audience could hear what it's like to do what we do. So we love to share that. And we love to kind of just share with the community what it is that we do. And so I would say it's really hard. And I'll be 100% honest. I am so guilty of never putting stuff on my Instagram or Facebook. But, we're doing stuff though. Like there's some like I'm busy all day long. Like after this, there's a ton of stuff we'll be doing. So I don't put enough on there. I'm definitely guilty of that, but we have a lot of deals cooking constantly. So,
well, I just decided I'm going to release this on Facebook today so people can watch it. And I'm going to put it in my Facebook private group because I truly believe, well, first of all, guys, and I'll just be 100% clear and I'll write it in my caption. If you're not following them, if you're not tapped into their resources, which I spent time going through one morning, amazing stuff. Can't beat it with a stick. Second thing, if you do not understand this vehicle, what's about to happen when this Mack truck of BS that they keep kicking the can down the road. If you don't understand what's coming, it is creative financing cornucopia. We'll use that word of opportunities available because there are extremely delinquent sellers who are not choosing to sell for whatever reason that are going to have to figure out a reason. And this is a great opportunity for you to catch hold of some of these. I tell this story all the time. It's from a girl who lives here. She was a mom, she was a nurse, and she was in her second kid. And she was like, how do you make money in real estate? She just YouTubed it. And she was like learning about like wholesaling and creative finance. And she told me this a couple months ago, and she bought a house. It was $60,000 in Waco. And the guy was like, I want you to pay cash. And she's like, I want you to get a loan or something. She's like, I can't get a loan for that. She's like, don't give me a loan for $60,000. And she was like, why don't you just like hold the note and I'll pay you? And so she put $5,000 in and she paid him a note, 0 interest loan. She cleaned it up. She sold it for $90,000 on a wraparound loan with $10,000 down and cash flowed $500. So she got $5,000, cash flowed, paid $25 a month for a third party facilitator of the loan. And she doesn't do a single thing with that loan.
Right. And I'm sure she could charge interest.
Yes. Yeah, she is charging interest. And so it's like when she told me that, I was like, oh my God. Like what and my mentors always taught me like, how many tools do you have in your tool belt? Like, can you get into this deal? Like in every deal I look at it, I'm going, I can Airbnb it. I can wholesale it. I can flip it. I can hold it. You have to understand, you don't have to understand everything about it, but you have to understand certain mechanisms of said thing so you can give yourself more options. Because if you look in your life through a lens of this is the only way I can do it, you're going to leave a lot to be desired, and you're going to leave a lot on the table.
Well, and that's the thing is, like you said, it's just about the efficiency of converting your leads. And you're going to pass up on deals. And after we start explaining this concept to our students, they're like, oh, I actually have a seller I just spoke to who this would have worked on. It happens every single time. So
that's kind of why we came up with the playbook, because we find ourselves like with like running a play, we're going to do this with the house. And then all of a sudden, the title work comes back and we end up taking it this route. And so having all that knowledge, like you're saying, those tools or the plays in our playbook, and be able to run it the correct way. Otherwise you would have walked away and no one would win at that point. But there's usually a way out. It's just being creative with it.
Got to call an audible sometimes. Got to call an audible sometimes.
Our salesman or a football coach, we don't even know,
One and the same.
I love it. So if people want to find out more about what y'all got going on and follow your journey, how would they do that?
Definitely check out our Instagram. I'm pretty active on mine, Jenn Delle Fave, and then also Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, and the website, creativefinanceplaybook.com.
Love it. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you send it out to your friends. If you're watching today, guys, I'm going to put their website in the comments. So thank y'all so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.